Hello everyone. It's James again. And today I want to talk a bit more regarding the hoarding of the narcissist. And how they use this terrible thing to control you and your life. As mentioned before in my previous video, the narcissist will do a lot of sneaky covert things. Oftentimes using other people without them knowing it. To make it so you have no outside life. And one of those things narcissist, or some narcissist parents love to use, is being a hoarder. Now it's important to note, not all narcissist parents do this. Susie, my ex, her family had a wonderful big home, decorated with all the best things. But her narcissist parents kept control of their children with money, and keeping them dependent on getting money from them. And because they learned over the years this reward system was built on doing all the wrong things their parents wanted them to do, it cemented their behaviors as to what they were to become later on in life, which was manipulative and lying reptiles. But some parents might not have these types of means, so they will use other things to control their children. In some parents' cases, that's becoming a hoarder. Now first I want to say, there are some people that are hoarders that aren't narcissists. And vice versa. There are some hoarders that once they get help from their problem they are very thankful. But, and there is a but, I think even those people that aren't narcissists, so to speak, and hate the fact they can't get over their hoarding, use the fact just like the narcissist, that if they have an environment where it doesn't allow their children to thrive, the children will never leave. Because, let's face it, most hoarders that are stuck in a pile of garbage aren't that productive in life for the most part. And the only thing they have is their children. And if their children get sick of the situation and leave, what else will they have? So even the non-narcissists use the same tricks of the narcissist to control their children so the children won't leave. Now with that being said, I mentioned in my previous video somewhat how this took shape in my life growing up. So I thought I would elaborate a bit. Because there are many, and I do mean many, similarities between all of our stories. But there are also some differences as well. And those differences show that these reptile creatures are capable of really anything. Anything bad. Now, what happened in my life? Well, as you may know, my father was fighting for custody for myself and my golden child brother. And eventually he gave up fighting. I think he was advised, now looking back, by his attorney to stop fighting because it was a no-win situation. And I think the only reason why his attorney advised him of this is this was his friend as well. Because sadly, many attorneys will let the man spend all of his money letting him think he has a chance. All the while the man is going broke. But I believe my father's attorney told him the truth about what the outcome would be. Furthermore, in my father's situation, my mother threatened to say my father inappropriately touched my brother, which was a lie. So I think my father realized at that moment it was more trouble than it was worth. And I don't blame him. I remember him driving by to look at my brother and I in the front area riding our bikes or whatever. And he would just look at us for a minute or two and then drive off. Shortly thereafter he died of a heart attack. My mother quickly blew through my father's money. And we had to move into a very low-income area, where my mother quickly started to work the system, and was on every form of assistance allowed to her. Well, allowed to her because I and my brother were alive. Because if it was just her by herself they wouldn't have given her a dime. Which is another topic for another video. This is where my mother really jumped things into high gear to make sure both my brother and I wouldn't have a life outside of her. Because we went to a small school, it was easier for my mother to pose as the mother in distress, and get teachers and other parents involved wanting to help my mother. But just like a narcissist, my mother used these people up until they were so fed up with her. They wanted her to just get lost. Well, all of this information made its way down to kids in my class and beyond. Before you knew it, I spent every day of my life fighting for my life. being picked on and bullied. And yes, I fought back. But I also cried a lot. I would throw up on the way to school from nerves. The teachers treated me and my brother horribly. We were put in every slow learning class you could think of. And we were treated like dummies. But this is what my mother wanted. Because that meant we would be secluded. And our mother could do her brainwashing tricks on us as much as she wanted. And we had limited exposure to what a normal house was like. Keep in mind, my mother at this particular time wasn't a hoarder at all. Actually, for the record, as mentioned in previous videos, my mother has, and had, OCD really bad regarding germs, and sprays everything with Lysol. And though we lived in a low-income area, and she made us wear high waters to school to get made fun of worse, our modest home was for the most part clean. I mean, it was tiny as tiny could be. So it didn't take much time to clean. As my mother spent most of her days sleeping on the sofa and watching television. But she usually managed to get a quick hour together to keep things clean. Well, as time went on, the neighborhood we lived in became more and more unsafe. So we moved to a little bit of a better area. Well, I wouldn't call it better. It was just a bit more safe. And we lived in a small cheap home. And this is where the hoarding began. Now, the new school I went to was much bigger than before. And there was less access for her to run her game and act like the victim single mother. And that's where I believe she had to replace that narcissistic supply she was getting from acting that way previously. And her ability to triangulate her children. So before you knew it, our house looked like one big garage sale. She still kept up her Lysol spraying and clean germaphobe stuff. But our home sadly looked like my mother was a junk dealer. And because she kept up her routine, sleeping all day and watching television. And spraying Lysol with light cleaning for maybe less than 30 minutes. And though our place wasn't dirty, it was just extremely messy and junk-like, if that makes sense. Now, I did end up meeting a so-called friend around my high school years, whose mother was also a narcissist. And was a hoarder. And she didn't have the germaphobe problem my mother had. And boy oh boy, his house was filthy compared to mine. And in that I somehow felt lucky. But the truth is, we were both unlucky. Sadly, he was a narcissist as well. And it took a long time to see that. And eventually I had to cut this person out of my life. But now, looking back, though the hoarding was done in different ways, his mother was filthy and mine wasn't. It was all done for the same reasons. And that was to control us. So we would be too embarrassed to bring people over to our homes. So we wouldn't develop normally as people. And because of this stunting of our emotional growth, we would fall back on our sick, twisted programming. At least that was the hope of our narcissist mothers. I mean, think about it. Parents are supposed to want the best for their children. They want their children to see the world and have a better life than they did. And when a parent does something like hoarding that greatly limits that growth of their children, that's called being a horrific parent. Because even though a parent might not be a narcissist that is a hoarder, their reasonings are very much the same. You rarely hear hoarders express sorrow and remorse for the pain they caused their children. If anything, they give a bunch of lame excuses and word salad for why they do what they do. Here's a good example. Think about the alcoholic that knows they are an alcoholic. And they know it's wrong even though they can't stop. They might pull their children to the side and say, "Hey, I have a problem and I can't stop. And I'm sorry for what I've done to your life. Please don't drink or smoke. It will destroy you like it has me." There's a difference between that and a parent that acts like they don't have a drinking problem. And everyone just needs to get over it. Including the children that are being destroyed in the process. And that's the mindset of the hoarder, regardless of they are a narcissist or not. Because at the end of the day, if they are at a life low where they are a hoarder, they know they don't have many life choices. And to have their children to get up and leave, means they will die alone in their pile of junk. And they don't want that. So what do? They use that junk to not only imprison themselves, but they also use it to imprison their children as well. Because they think if no one wants my child will come right back home and be with me. And if they are a narcissist, they will feed on the pain all of this causes their children. This is why regardless if your parent or parents used hoarding, or they have a nice house and used their money, or they used both hoarding and money to limit your ability to live a normal and proper life, you need to understand you learned a very warped, and I do mean warped, sense of how the world works. And if you try to become a successful person out there in life with this faulty programming, you are going to be met with one disappointment after another. And that's why we experience such failures. Because when other children were developing themselves and talents, our talents and skills were being snuffed out. And then when we became free, we still weren't free. We hadn't come into contact with information about narcissistic abuse yet. And our narcissist parent or parents still had a hold on our lives. But just like those Turpin children, we escaped. We are here, right now, fighting for a better life. And this is why I never want to forget what happened to me. Because it lets me see things in my life correctly. That I have to work a bit harder in life because of the rough start. Now this doesn't mean I'm not going to try. Or I'm looking for pity. Or anything like that. No. Not at all. But when things don't go perfectly as well as planned, or they take longer than what I'd hoped, I do my best. And I fail at this at times. But I do my best to not beat myself up. Come on, James. Pull yourself together. You've been through hell and back. Even though some might not see what you have a lot. But considering what you've been through, you've done well for yourself. Be proud of yourself. God is with you. It's okay. It might take you a bit longer because you're getting a slow start. But God is with you. Keep going and you will get where you're needing to go, all in God's time. Or sometimes I feel a certain way. Isolated. And sad. But heck. Look at my family. It is what it is. I just work through those feelings and pain. But I've found. Now that I know what it is that caused all of this, it makes it tolerable, if that makes sense. Tolerable enough to stand back up. Take a deep breath. And keep on trying. That's our life. That's our life. With that being said, let's keep on praying for wisdom. Let's keep praying for strength. And let's keep on praying for courage. And until next time. Bye for now. And be good to yourself.